In 1990, a 15-year-old girl named Jennifer sat down with a psychologist and described in vivid detail being lost in a shopping mall as a small child. She remembered the fear. She remembered the old man who found her. She remembered her mother's face when they were reunited. None of it happened. Her older brother had made up the story a week earlier as an experiment. Jennifer wasn't lying. She wasn't confused, and she wasn't being dramatic for attention. When she described that mall, she felt exactly what you feel when you describe something true. The fear was real fear. The relief was real relief. Her brain had built a complete memory, sensory, emotional, specific, around an event that never touched her life. So here's the question underneath that story. If a brain can build a childhood memory out of nothing, what does that mean for the ones you actually trust? The ones you'd swear on? The birthday, the accident, the day your parents split, the first time you felt truly afraid. You'd assume those are different, safer, anchored to something real. They aren't as anchored as you think. The psychologist working with Jennifer was Elizabeth Loftus, and the mall story wasn't a one-off curiosity. It was the pilot for a much bigger study. Loftus and her team recruited 24 participants and gave each of them 4 short childhood stories, supposedly collected from their own family. 3 were true, pulled from real family history with a relative's help. 1 was entirely fabricated, the lost in the mall scenario, adapted slightly for each person. Nobody was told which story was fake. The results should unsettle you. About a quarter of participants accepted the false memory as real, and some of them didn't just accept it. They elaborated on it. They added details Loftus's team never gave them. What the old man was wearing, how the mall smelled, what their mother said when she found them. The brain wasn't retrieving a memory. It was finishing one. This wasn't a fluke result from a small, unusual study. Researchers have run versions of this experiment for decades, using different fake events, different population, different country, and the number holds in roughly the same range every time. Something close to a third of ordinary adults can be handed a memory of an event that never happened and walk away certain it did, which raises an uncomfortable follow-up. If a memory can be planted from nothing, what happens to a memory that's real but old? Does it just sit there, untouched, waiting to be replayed exactly as it happened? Or does something else happen to it every single time you take it out? Here's where it gets stranger than false memories alone. In the early 2000s, neuroscientist Karim Nader ran a study on rats that would eventually change how memory itself gets described in text. Rats were trained to fear a specific tone, paired with a mild shock. Days later, Nader's team brought the memory back, played the tone, let the rat re-experience the fear, and then, in that exact window, blocked a specific protein in the brain needed to store memories. Fear memory didn't just weaken. In many cases, it vanished, as if it had never been learned at all. The implication was radical. A memory isn't stored once and left alone in a drawer. Every time it's recalled, it becomes temporarily unstable, chemically unlocked, and has to be rebuilt and restored before it can be trusted again. Neuroscientists call this reconsolidation. Each time you remember something, you're not opening a file. You're rewriting one, using whatever material happens to be lying around in your head at that exact moment. That rewriting isn't neutral. Whatever you're feeling when you recall an old memory gets folded into it a little. Whatever you've learned since, whatever story you've told about it since, whatever photograph you've looked at since, all of it can bleed into the version that gets saved back down. The 10th time you remember your 5th birthday isn't a replay of the first time. It's a copy of a copy of a copy, each one made under slightly different conditions by a slightly different version of you. And here's the part that should really land. This isn't a flaw that shows up occasionally in unreliable people under unusual conditions. It's the default setting of every human memory system ever tested. The confident grandparent describing the war in perfect, unwavering detail. The sibling who remembers the family vacation completely differently than you do and is just as certain as you are. Neither one is lying. Both of you are running the same imperfect process, and both of you feel exactly the same conviction Jennifer felt about that mall. You might still be holding out for one exception. Surely the biggest memories, the ones burned in by shock and history itself, are different. Everyone remembers exactly where they were for the events that stopped the world. Psychologists even have a name for these, flashbulb memories, because people describe them like a photograph fired into the brain, permanent and complete, down to the room and the light and who else was there. The morning after September 11th, 2001, a researcher named Jennifer Tallarico, working with William Hurst, started collecting those exact memories from more than 3,000 people across 7 American cities, where they were, who they were with, what they were doing, the moment they heard. People answered with total confidence, the way you'd answer a question about your own name. Tallarico and Hurst went back to the same people a year later, then again, years after that. The confidence never dropped. People described their memories with the same certainty in year 10 that they had in week 1. But the accuracy did drop, and it dropped hard. Within a single year, roughly 40% of the specific details people gave, who told them what room they were in, what they were doing, had already changed from their original account. By the 10-year mark, some participants were flatly contradicting the story they themselves had given days after the attacks, while rating their confidence as high as it had ever been. Read that twice. The memory got worse. The certainty didn't move at all. Whatever mechanism inside you is supposed to flag a memory, as shaky was simply never wired to fire, even for the biggest, most rehearsed, most emotionally loaded memories a person can carry. If the system fails there, it was never going to hold up for a birthday party or a fight with a sibling 30 years ago, which is the real trap here. And it's the same trap that makes false memories so easy to plant in the first place. There is no internal sensation that separates a real memory from a reconstructed one. No warning label, no asterisk, no flicker of doubt attached to the fabricated part. A memory built 5 minutes ago by a stranger's suggestion feels exactly as solid from the inside as one built 40 years ago by something that actually happened to you, or one rehearsed 100 times since the day it happened. Confidence was never evidence. It never was. This matters far beyond childhood nostalgia or where you stood on one terrible morning. Courts have leaned on eyewitness testimony for centuries, treating a confident witness as close to physical evidence. Loftus spent much of her later career testifying in criminal cases, showing juries exactly how easily a confident, detailed, sincere memory can be entirely wrong. Not because the witness is dishonest, but because memory was never built to be a recording device. It was built to be useful, flexible, and fast. Accuracy was never the priority. So go back to Jennifer, sitting across from a psychologist, describing an old man and a shopping mall, and her mother's face with total, unshakable sincerity. She wasn't broken. She wasn't unusually gullible. She was doing exactly what every human brain does with every memory, every single day, reaching for something that feels true and quietly finishing the parts that aren't there. Somewhere in your own head right now is a memory you would defend without hesitation. The room, the light, the exact words someone said to you. You should probably still trust it mostly, but hold it a little more loosely than you did 5 minutes ago. Because the version you're holding was never the original. It's just the most recent copy.